Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, members of the media, and of course the general public. Welcome to our press conference coming to you live from the National Assembly, from Parliament, which of course, as you know, is taking place at the Arthur Chung Convention Center. We wanted to make sure that we didn't change our date with you every Friday at 1:30. I'm happy to say that with me is Member of Parliament Juritha Finance, and Juritha just presented a riveting, excellent presentation as part of the budget debates which started today. Also here with us at the lounge at the Arthur Chung Convention Center is Onyx Duncan. Onyx is executive member of the Youth for Change, and we're actually going to start with Onyx in a few minutes. But of course, I do want to let you know that we have leader of the Alliance for Change, Nigel Hughes, and chairman of the Alliance for Change, David Patterson, also coming in on this press conference live from the Center for Change location on Railway Embankment. So I do want to say too, we're going to have a special review of the health component of our national budget, and that's going to be presented by Colin Haynes. So we're in for a good discussion. With that, I want to invite Onyx. Hey, Onyx Duncan, please give us your presentation. Thank you.
And good afternoon, members of the media. The Youth for Change would like to make comments based on some of the measures in Budget 2025 that seem very outrageous to us, and the allocations to a specific organization. The YFC notes that in Budget 2024, the President Youth Advisory Council received a 75 million budgetary allocation to take on various initiatives. Since its launch, we have not seen or heard of any real initiative that would have impacted the lives of a young person. We're yet to see the establishment of training centers across the country. There was to be a revamping of the Youth Entrepreneurial Skills Training Program, and there has been no word or no significant data provided on these programs. In 2024, the President's Youth Advisory Council spent a total of $16,220,000 Guyana dollars, with no real programs completed or initiated. Where was that amount spent? Our only assumption is that the money went to salaries and meals for council meetings, and no real project has been initiated. The PYAC has been allotted another $75 million in Budget 2025. The YFC would like to understand the real scope of work for this organization that falls under the Office of the President. It is crucial. We at the YFC understand it is crucial to implement robust mechanisms for evaluating how effectively these funds translate into tangible outcomes for young people. No clear performance indicators and benchmarks were set. The YFC would like more accountability so as to measure the impact of this investment.
Thank you, Onyx Duncan. And with that, I would like to ask Colin Haynes if Colin could come to us virtually with his presentation.
It's a privilege to be here, guys. So nothing secure, prosperous, and sustainable about Budget 2025. Guyana is facing a mental health crisis of unprecedented proportions. Coupled with non-communicable, as we call it, chronic diseases, collectively they account for over 80% of all deaths among Guyanese. The country is truly facing a health crisis. A critical barrier to addressing mental health remains the need for reliable data on mental health. Non-communicable diseases account now for incidence rate of over 500 per every 100,000 daily. But sadly, the 2025 budget does not offer a path for solving these emerging issues. Before a house is built, a plan is needed to direct the path of construction. The Ministry of Health has been operating for the past 4 years in government without a comprehensive health sector strategic plan. The last known plan with Health Vision 2020 has expired, and while there are discussions on formulation of a plan, the health sector led by the minister is on autopilot, sailing into an abyss. And sadly, the people of Guyana are the ones who are suffering daily from these atrocities. Despite all the fanfare of claiming to be a caring and transformative government, the government of Guyana has moved from spending healthcare as a percentage of the budget from 15.6% and 16% in 2020 and 2021 to 11.8% and 12.4% in 2024 and 2025, respectively. These numbers almost mirror the education sector with a dreadful 26% matriculation rate. The nutritional status for newborns are worrying. Based on Appendix 1 of the Ministry of Finance budget speech, 0.5% of children under 5 are severely malnourished, which is an increase from 0.1 when the coalition left office in 2020. Moderately malnourished children under 5 have increased from 0.5 in 2020 to 1.5 in 2024. That's a whopping 1% in 4 years. Childhood obesity for under 5 is on the rise from 0.1% in 2020 to 3% in 22, and it remains a problem of 1.5% in 2024. Lest we forget also, there's a shortage of 600 nurses at the Georgetown Public Hospital, having over 150 resigned in 2023, which represents a total deficit of 55% of the normal complement. So countrywide, there's a shortage of 4,000 nurses to meet the current and future demands for new facilities that are being built. In the budget, plans to expand nursing, and this is straight out of what the minister says, the minister in his presentation, plans to expand nursing clinical and technical training programs for an additional 3,290 projected persons in 2025. A statement like this is so vague we cannot imagine any resolution to this emergency soon. So what is our proposed solutions? In response to this urgent crisis, the AFC is advocating for a comprehensive overhaul of Guyana's approach to mental health. And central to this vision would be an establishment of a dedicated mental health institution like currently existing with the National AIDS Program Secretariat. We're also proposing making mental health a separate program within the Ministry of Health, along with the Department for Health, Information, Technology, and Climate Change, understanding that there is a correlation now between mental health, physical health, and social health as well. So we'll bring it to the number of 10 programs. The mental health institution would also focus on specialized training, rigorous research, and quality assurance through ongoing program evaluations. We also propose the creation of a mental health corps, which will be a specialized team designed to provide immediate crisis interventions across all 10 regions in Guyana. This initiative will aim to bring much needed mental health services to communities that are underserved or completely neglected. We will also advocate for the introduction of 3 new nursing schools in Latem, Mabaruma, and Fort Wellington, and to increase the capacity currently from 200 now to 300 in the current schools located in Georgetown, Linden, and New Amsterdam. The party also recognizes the fundamental development stages of a child at under 5 years old, where critical physical, mental, and social health are formed. To combat the unprecedented levels of under 5 childhood nutritional deficiencies, we will invest in a public health program that provides nutritional needs for children and mothers with the goal of providing early maternal nutrition for mothers, which is essentially important for breastfeeding and natural development of the child. The party will also draw from models that have been successful in reducing maternal and childhood mortality and malnutrition from best practices that exist in the Scandinavian territories. In conclusion, Budget 2025 has failed to offer security for the most vulnerable of our society, with limited investments in health, education, and economic development. It does not offer prosperity for folks living with mental illness and chronic diseases without a strategic plan. And the budget's deficiency in addressing the need for institutional capacity cannot ensure sustainability. Thank you very much.
Much Colin Haynes. Components of our national 2025 budget. As many of you will know, Colin is a member of the Alliance for Change and is also a consultant and healthcare practitioner based in the USA. Now I'd like to invite our leader of the Alliance for Change, Nigel Hughes, to make his statement. And just reminding you, we do have Member of Parliament Eureka Finance and David Patterson, Member of Parliament, also here to take any of your questions. Over to Mr. Hughes.
Good afternoon, members of the press. Thank you very much for being here. I want to start off by commending the presentation by Member of Parliament Eureka Finance today. I hope we have the benefit of hearing from her later. Two specific items I'd like to address today. The first one is the Gas to Shore project. You will recall that sometime during last year, a request was made for the feasibility for the gas to energy program, and none was provided. After about 3 to 4 weeks, we understand that what was provided, or what we were told, was that there was an environmental and technical feasibility study. The press, particularly Title News, then persisted in asking about the existence of a feasibility study, because this is the largest project we've had. The application for the loan, I think, was $620 million US, and therefore we needed to have a sense of the economic viability of the program. There are good members of civil society who continue to hold discussions about this gas to energy project, continue to press for the feasibility study. Vice President Jagdeo at a press conference recently said that, or if you want the feasibility study, you can ask Exim for the feasibility study. I'd like to commend the good members of civil society who took the initiative to use the Freedom of Information Act in the United States and to request from Exim the feasibility study. No, the response from Exim was very, very clear. There has been no feasibility study conducted by Exim Bank. I believe yesterday at the press conference held by the Vice President, he indicated that he misspoke and he didn't mean feasibility study. He said he meant a due diligence was conducted by an American firm retained by Exim Bank called Sargent and Lundy. I just want to set some parameters here so that everybody understands the context. There's a big difference between feasibility, especially financial feasibility, and due diligence. And there's a difference between lenders and borrowers. Well, lenders and those who are borrowing. In this case, Exim is the lender. Any lender, before they conduct, they lend money, will first of all look at the capacity of the borrower to pay. Now, that doesn't mean that the project for which they're lending the money is financially feasible. Their primary concern is whether you have the ability to pay, and equally important to them is what are they going to take as security for the project. So, for example, in Guyana, in the history of Gaisuco, in order to secure crop financing, they went to a Dutch bank called ING. Now, you know that Gaisuco's financial health has always been poor. So when ING was going to lend the money to Gaisuco, they didn't take security over Gaisuco's assets because they knew that to be able to realize those in the event of a default would be very difficult. What they did is they took security over the income of Gaisuco that would come from the sale of the crops. So in other words, before Gaisuco received the cent, they had a charge on the monies that were being paid for the sugar and the molasses they sold internationally. So in that case, ING had very little risk because they knew that the second Gaisuco defaulted, they would just take all the income coming in before Gaisuco can get their hands on it. So similarly with this gas to energy project, we have to ask a few questions when we come to the arrangement between Exim and the government of Guyana. Exim is not going to be very concerned over the financial feasibility of the project if their security is a direct charge on the income from oil, generated from oil. So in other words, if they have a first charge on oil income, the second we default on paying for the gas to energy, they would take that charge. So when we ask for feasibility, it's because we as citizens of Guyana need to know how we are going to repay this loan for this project that the government has undertaken on our behalf. And so it is important that we know that, first of all, that project has the ability to pay for itself. Now, the loan is in US dollars, which means the repayments have to be in US dollars. And if you put aside the oil and gas income, then it means that we have to pay for that loan out of our exports. Now, the gas to energy project is not primarily designed to support industries that are going to generate foreign currency. The premise for the gas to shore is cheap electricity for the citizens. And therefore, cheap electricity being provided to the citizens who are going to pay in Guyana dollars. So it's not generating US dollars to pay back the loan. There is a normal presumption that part of that cheap electricity will be used for industrial purposes, and hopefully most of those industrial purposes will be used to manufacture and export products that would generate US dollars. And that's why it's important to have a feasibility, because we want to see as a standalone whether this project would generate foreign currency to pay for the production of the gas secure plant. We the citizens will be provided with none. You can't ask us to go to the borrower, to the lender, sorry, as but we took that invitation and say to them, what is the feasibility? They are only concerned with your ability to repay. And that's why, for example, in some countries where other countries have given them loans, some of their big national projects going to default, like ports, and the foreign governments come in and take over their ports. So the vice president said yesterday at his press conference that Exim Bank had retained the firm of Sargent and Lundy to conduct the due diligence. Now, I have to tell you from my experience representing lenders in international transactions, especially to entities that are going to do business in Guyana, a due diligence report is a completely different animal from a feasibility study. As a lender, you are concerned with a couple of very basic things: the legal status of the borrower, whether the borrower has gone through the appropriate steps to undertake the liability, due diligence to see if the borrower has any charges against it, what the health of the borrower is financially. That's what a due diligence report is for a borrower. Now, and normally that due diligence report is done by the lawyers. So they would typically hire a firm, and the firm would conduct the test, does the company file its annual returns, etc. The vice president said that they had hired Sargent and Lundy to conduct a due diligence report. That's what he said Exim did. They didn't say anything about what Guyana did, but Exim hired Sargent and Lundy. Well, Sargent and Lundy is an engineering and design firm. So the only diligence they can conduct would be into the engineering and design of the gas to energy plant. They're not a financial services firm. They're not a financial analytical firm. They're not a firm that provides financial advice. So clearly, if Exim Bank hired Sargent and Lundy, it would be for them to review the engineering and design of the gas to energy project. They clearly are not, or they don't have the skills to be able to conduct a feasibility study. And as I indicated before, if your charge or your securitization for the project is over the proceeds from the income from oil, you're really not that concerned about the feasibility of the gas to energy program. So I'd like, again, to repeat the Alliance for Change's request, first of all, for the feasibility study that was done by Guyana to justify this project. We want to be, we the citizens are entitled to see the financial architecture and the premise upon which this project was undertaken. As we know that the cost has escalated and therefore the financial parameters must have changed. The second request we have is that we want to know what is the securitization that Guyana is providing to Exim Bank for this loan. Is the securitization a charge over the income from our oil? Or is it a charge over the gas to energy plant? And in either case, we want to know what's the nature of the security that Exim is taking over this project. There's a lot of discussion globally about projects that have attracted financing from some parts of the world. And when they run into default, the people from that part of the world literally come and take over the project and they bring their nationals to run it. So if, for example, it's a port, well, let me just take the gas to energy plant. If we run into problems with the gas to energy plant, does this mean that the lender will suddenly come take over the plant and hand it over to whoever can run it? All those matters are matters of national concern which we have to discuss. The second issue I'd like to discuss today is the question of GCOM. We held a press conference yesterday, and I'm not going to go down dealing with further discussion of what transpired during the course of our meeting with them, but we will go this far. Shortly after we held the press conference, we read in the press that the government said that they're not going to pass legislation to facilitate biometrics. However, if there was a request from GCOM for various legislative matters, then the government would consider that request and presumably lay the appropriate legislation in the House, in the National Assembly. Well, it is evident now that the chairman of GCOM has already said that fingerprinting is possible, it's just a question of the time. We know that the position that they had taken before was that fingerprinting as a prerequisite to vote was not legally permissible and not constitutional. Now that we know globally that fingerprinting is the accepted means of identification for most persons and also is an effective method for preventing multiple voting by the same person. And now that the government has said that they would be receptive to requests from GCOM for legislative changes to enhance the integrity of the election, we would like to call on GCOM now to provide to the government a list of legislative changes which are necessary to improve the integrity and acceptability of our national election. And we believe top of that list should be fingerprinting. So since we've had that meeting and the government has indicated their position, there is a menu of measures. It doesn't have to be a particularly long menu that includes fingerprinting and other changes. For example, residency. We've already heard of the difficulties we've been having with with registered address, so that we can have those legislative changes done with alacrity, and therefore the country could move to a stage where the integrity of the elections and the processes leading to the results are accepted across the board, and that they provide the highest possible level of verification and identification of persons who attend the polling station for the purposes of exercising their franchise. I thank you. I don't know if our host is still there, Kathy and Loretta.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hughes. And at this point, I certainly want to invite members of the media to ask their questions. Please start by identifying yourself and the organization you represent, which is the customary procedure. Open for questions. Please feel free to use the raise hand function if you can. If not, I'll be more than happy to have you jump in. And just reminding you, we've got Jaretha Finance, Member Parliament, here to answer any questions. We've also got David Patterson and of course Mr. Hughes, Nigel. Well, it looks as though there are no questions. I think that means that we have been pretty clear with the information we've provided, and I do accept a hand is up.
No, I think Guyana Chronicle, they have their hands up.
Sorry, is Colin saying something?
Yeah, I think I see.
Sorry,
Guyana
Colin, go
Chronicle
ahead.
had their
Sorry,
hands
Colin.
up.
Guyana Chronicle has their hands up.
Guyana Chronicle has one.
Can you please go ahead?
Hi, good afternoon. Is everyone hearing me?
Colin.
Yes, we are.
Hear me?
We're not hearing you.
Are you hearing me now?
Yes, we are.
All right. Now that the AFC has met with GCOM, will the party conduct a review of the role of its members during the attempt to give the coalition victory at the previous elections?
I'm not sure of the connection between us meeting with GCOM yesterday with an agenda that was made public that does not include what you have just indicated. And your question, I think you used the word rigging, and the involvement with the Alliance for Change. I'm not aware that the Alliance for Change. Sorry, I didn't hear you.
I did not say rigging.
Oh, what did you say?
I said attempt to give the coalition victory.
Yes, yeah, you just went one step down. No, at the moment, the Alliance for Change, as I've said, I'm sure to you or your colleagues before, that we are going to be conducting a review of our time in office, and that would include the period that I suspect that you were referring to. That review is going to start within the next quarter, but that is not connected to our discussions that were held yesterday with GCOM, and it was not on the agenda, neither did GCOM raise it.
I do have another question for you, Mr. Hughes. You had previously mentioned that the coalition deal is somewhat on life support. Can you elaborate on this further?
Mr. Patterson would be very happy to take that question.
Thank you very much, Naomi. Our position is quite clear and quite simple. Of course, we still are committed to having discussions. I mean, of course, once they're done under certain parameters, respect for the negotiation process by both parties and the terms of engagement adhered to by all concerned. All party personal and preconditions are set aside in the interest of what's good for the nation. That should become our mantra and not for individual party gain. We would want also a clear, mutually agreed political platform alternative to the current status quo to be developed and presented jointly to the nation for consideration. And that obviously, as we would have previously written down, that we adhere to March 31st, 2025 deadline. And if nothing is agreed, and of course, I mean, nothing is agreed, the saying is, until all is agreed. And then afterwards, we will see where we are at collectively.
Thank you, Mr. Patterson. Any other questions?
I do have another question in regards to the coalition. So if the coalition...
If there are no other questions, then I just want to remind you that...
Catherine, I think Miss
Sorry, give me a heads up because I'm not able to see. I'm not seeing
I
any.
have
Did we
another.
have one, David?
Yeah.
Partnership fails, how will you ensure that your supporters are not delusionized by the lack of a united opposition or a united party per se?
Our supporters are, I mean, I'm sure all the political party supporters are ready, willing to go. I mean, coalition or not, I know that we're busting in the scenes to get out there. And I'm sure you as well would be very, very energized to join us in our pathway to have a government that is representative of the people and not representative of the few. So we have no problem at all with that. I'm sure every political party will tell you that, but in particular, the Line for Change, they're busting at the seams. As you can see, I know that you come to every press conference, and you are aware of that.
And I don't see any others, so I want to remind our members of the media and our citizens and members looking on, we are coming live from the Parliament. And of course, we've got our colleague Sherrod Duncan coming up. So we say thank you very much for joining us. Do tune into our live stream, and we'll see you next Friday, if not before. Thank you to all our presenters.